My name is Adrian Carter, and I'm 38. Just last Tuesday, my wife Elena disappeared. The police are calling it a potential accident. Her car was found near a treacherous cliffside road she sometimes took home from her late shifts at the gallery. But there's no body, just a lot of unanswered questions. And a terrifying void where her laughter used to be. When I called my mother, my voice cracking as I tried to explain, she sighed and said, "Adrian, this is incredibly inconvenient. Your father and I are hosting the annual Founders Gala tonight. Can we discuss this complexity tomorrow?" My 10-year-old son, Leo, and I sat in stunned silence that night, the quiet of the house amplified by Eleanor's absence and my family's chilling indifference. If you've ever felt abandoned by those who should have been closest, please let me know where you're experiencing this isolation, and subscribe to connect with others who understand this kind of solitude. Elena and I met while restoring a historic mural in the old downtown theatre. I was a structural engineer assessing the building's integrity, and she was the art historian meticulously documenting the mural's layers. Her passion was infectious and her knowledge seemed boundless. I fell for the way she saw beauty in decay, followed swiftly by her sharp wit and the smudge of paint she always had on her left cheekbone. We dated for 2 years, a whirlwind of late-night conversations about history and art, and she proposed to me unexpectedly on the scaffolding high above the theatre floor, using a paint-stained string instead of a ring. We married a year later, ignoring the whispers that I, from my established conservative family, was marrying beneath me. But Elena was my horizon. She was the person who showed me how to truly see the world. After her studies, Elena became a respected curator at a prestigious art gallery known for her ability to discover and champion emerging artists. She wasn't just good with brush strokes and periods, she was good with people, finding connections and stories in every piece. That combination made her exceptional. We spent 7 wonderful years building our life before Leo arrived. Our journey to parenthood wasn't easy. 2 years of trying, the heartbreak of failed attempts, and the quiet disappointment after each negative test left us emotionally raw. We had just started exploring adoption when Eleanor, against all odds, became pregnant with Leo. The pregnancy was smooth, a period of serene anticipation. Eleanor worked from home more often, her focus shifting slightly, but her dedication unwavering. She'd talk to her growing belly as if Leo was already a person, read him stories about artists and explorers, and plan imaginary museum trips. When Leo finally arrived, Eleanor held him like he was the most fragile, precious masterpiece she'd ever encountered. For 10 beautiful years, we were the family I'd always dreamed of. Elena didn't just curate art, she curated Leo's childhood. She spent hours helping him build elaborate Lego structures, seeing them as miniature architectural wonders. She never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. Her calendar was filled with reminders about Leo's activities, color-coded by their emotional significance to him. There were subtle signs that something else preoccupied her in recent months, that I missed things she dismissed as work stress. Cryptic phone calls she took in private, late nights spent poring over old documents that weren't art-related. A tension in her shoulders that seemed unrelated to gallery deadlines. The morning she disappeared started like any other Tuesday. Elena made Leo's favorite star-shaped toast while I packed his backpack. She kissed us both goodbye, promised to be home early to help Leo finish his science project on constellations, and headed to the gallery. Her last words to me were, "Don't forget to check the deadbolt, Adrian, and remember what I told you about the old box." Such a mundane, yet now haunting, final instruction. At 9:17 a.m., Detective Miller called. His voice was grave. "Mr. Carter, we've found your wife's car. It went over the embankment on Blackwood Pass. There's no sign of anyone." I remember the phone slipping from my hand, the distant clatter against the wooden floor seeming unreal. I called our neighbour, Clara, a retired teacher, to pick up Leo from school, then drove towards the pass, my mind a frantic, desperate loop of hope and dread. But it was too late. Search teams found no trace, likely swept away by the river current below, or perhaps something else, the lead investigator speculated, their words landing like stones. Seeing Elena's car, mangled and half-submerged, was a waking nightmare. It looked like a cruel sculpture, utterly unlike the vibrant person who had driven it just hours before. The next few hours passed in a haze of police questions, search efforts, and phone calls that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. What do you tell your son when his mother might be gone forever? How do you explain disappeared to a child who understands here and not here? Telling Leo about Elena was the hardest moment of my life. When he got into Clara's car after school, his face was already a question mark. "Where's Mummy?" She promised she'd help with my project. His voice small, his backpack heavy on his lap. I pulled over to the side of the quiet suburban street, unable to steer through the fog of my grief. Turning to face him, I took his small hands in mine. "Leo, something very sad has happened. Mummy's car. It was in an accident near the river." His eyes widened in fear and confusion. "Is she hurt? Can they fix it?" The innocent hope in his question tore me apart. "Oh, sweetie, they can't find her right now. Her car went into the river." He stared at me, his face pale, trying to grasp the incomprehensible. "Does that mean she's not coming home?" When I couldn't speak, only nod through my tears, he let out a cry that was less a sound than a raw expression of primal pain. He threw himself into my arms, his small body shaking with sobs. "I want Mummy, please, I want my Mummy." There was nothing I could do but hold him and cry, parked on the side of the road as the world outside continued its indifferent rotation. That evening, after I'd finally gotten Leo to sleep, clinging to Eleanor's worn scarf for comfort, the full weight of her absence crushed me. I sat in the darkened living room, surrounded by the tangible presence of her absence, her half-read book, the sketch pad left open on the coffee table, the faint scent of her perfume. The physical pain of grief was a suffocating weight, like being buried alive. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. I needed my parents, my family, the people who had always been the solid ground beneath my feet. With shaking hands, I called them. They'd built their empire together, weathered recessions and scandals. Surely they would know what to do, how to help me navigate this impossible void. My mother answered on the first ring. The sound of polite chatter and clinking glasses was audible in the background. "Adrian, darling, is that you? Are you all right?" "We're just about to greet the senator." "Mom," I choked out, my voice thick with tears. "Elena, she's gone." "Her car, it was found in the river." There was a brief, sharp intake of breath. Then I heard her cover the receiver and murmur something to my father. When she returned, her voice was carefully composed, perhaps even a touch rehearsed. "Oh, Adrian, how terribly unfortunate. Are you quite sure?" "Perhaps it's a misunderstanding. Her car went off the road, Mom. The police, they can't find her." The need to convince my own mother that my wife was likely dead felt like another layer of trauma. Well, this is quite distressing news, of course. "But Adrian, the gala. It's a critical night for your father's firm. Everyone who matters is here. Can you manage things tonight? We'll come by tomorrow when the dust settles." I was stunned. A society event took precedence over her son's catastrophe, over her daughter-in-law's disappearance, over her grandson's acute grief. My father came on the line then. "Adrian, this is a terrible shock. Regarding Elena's estate, did she have her affairs in order? Important to clarify these things promptly, you know. I'm coming right over. What can we do? But a question about legal matters while my wife was potentially at the bottom of a river." The uncertainty surrounding Eleanor's disappearance meant no funeral, only a small, somber gathering held 3 days later at the gallery where she had worked. Those days passed in a blur of police updates, or lack thereof, fielding questions I couldn't answer, and trying to comfort Leo while barely holding myself together. My parents called once, briefly, to ask if the gathering would be formal or informal, if they needed to make a statement. They didn't offer help or ask how Leo was coping. The day of the gathering dawned grey and drizzly, a reflection of my inner landscape. Leo insisted on wearing the bright blue sweater Elena had bought him because she said it matched his eyes. I helped him comb his hair the way Elena always did, sweeping it off his forehead with a gentle hand. We arrived at the gallery early. Elena's colleagues came first, their faces etched with grief. They had lost not just a curator, but a mentor, a friend. They each spoke quietly to Leo, sharing stories about his mother that might offer him comfort someday. My parents and my sister Carolyn were expected early too, but they arrived just as the gallery director was about to speak, making a quiet entrance as they found seats near the front. My mother gave me a quick, perfunctory hug, her expensive perfume jarringly out of place. Terrible traffic, darling. Vic? And Caroline had such difficulty finding something appropriate to wear on such short notice. When it came time to speak, I wasn't sure I could. My voice felt trapped in my chest. But then I looked at Leo, sitting there so small and brave, and found the strength somewhere. I spoke about Eleanor's passion, her integrity, her boundless love for her son. I spoke about her quirky habit of naming her plants, about her irrational fear of escalators, and her passionate defense of independent artists. I spoke about the way she always put her heart into everything she did. The bitter irony of comparing her dedication to my parents' detachment wasn't lost on me as I glanced at them, already shifting in their seats, clearly eager to depart. During the quiet reception afterwards at our home, I overheard my father talking to my uncle, George, near the fireplace. Eleanor was involved with that old downtown property, wasn't she, researching its history? There was talk about some valuable findings connected to it. If she didn't leave a will, that could be complicated, could hold significant value. It took everything in me not to confront him, to demand how he could be thinking about potential findings on the day we were acknowledging my wife was gone. But I was too emotionally drained, too focused on ensuring Leo was cared for by Clara and Isabella to create a scene. My mother and Caroline barely helped with the reception, leaving most of the work to Elena's friends and colleagues. They sat in the living room, accepting condolences as if they were the primary mourners, while I moved through my own home like a ghost, mechanically thanking people for coming. 2 weeks after the gathering, I was sitting at the kitchen table trying to make sense of insurance paperwork when the doorbell rang. Leo was at school, his first week back since Elena's disappearance. His teachers were keeping a close eye on him and sending me regular updates, for which I was profoundly grateful. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on the porch, my father adjusting his tie, my mother smoothing her dress. I hadn't spoken to them since the gathering. They'd sent a few texts with generic sentiments like, "Thinking of you and hope things are okay," but there had been no real communication. I opened the door, not bothering to hide my surprise. I didn't know you were coming over. "We thought we'd check in, see how you and Leo are doing," my mother said, sweeping past me into the house. "Is he at school?" "Good, we can talk openly." That should have been my first clue. This wasn't simply a supportive visit, but I was too emotionally drained to recognize the warning signs. They settled themselves in the living room while I automatically made coffee, falling into the hostess role even though they should have been the ones caring for me. When I brought in the mugs, my father was examining Elena's collection of rare art books. "Remarkable collection," he commented, flipping through a large folio. Elena had discerning taste and evidently valuable holdings. She did, I agreed, the simple past tense still a physical ache in my chest. After a few minutes of strained small talk about Leo's school and my mother's upcoming charity auction, My father cleared his throat in the way he always did before getting to the point. "Adrian, we wanted to talk to you about your situation," he began, setting his coffee mug down precisely on a coaster. "My situation with your prospects, Adrian." "Now that you're adjusting to life without Elena," my mother clarified, exchanging glances with my father. I stared at them, not immediately grasping the veiled implication. "I'm not sure what you mean. The police investigation is ongoing." Yes, the investigation, of course, but regardless of the outcome, Adrian, the reality is that certain opportunity arise in these circumstances. Your mother and I are getting older. Our investments are tied up in volatile markets, and with family obligations what they are. The implication hung in the air for a moment before the chilling truth settled over me. "Are you asking me for money?" "Now?" My mother had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but my father pressed on, his voice gaining a subtle edge. "We thought, given Elena's potential assets and the value of certain items she may have acquired or uncovered, that you might be in a position to assist family. After all, we are your parents." The sheer audacity of their request left me momentarily speechless. My wife was missing, possibly dead, and they were here, not to comfort me, but to demand a share of whatever she might have left behind. "How much are you thinking?" I asked, my voice flat, hollowed out by disbelief. My father, apparently mistaking my tone for reluctant negotiation, brightened. "Well, we were thinking access to whatever valuable assets Elena may have left or uncovered. Perhaps a significant portion of any sale or recovery. That would greatly assist our current liquidity needs and leave enough for you and Leo." "Access to my missing wife's potential assets," I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Assets intended for her son, the son whose mother you couldn't be bothered to comfort because you were at a gala?" My mother flinched again, but my father remained unperturbed, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond me. "Now, Adrian, there's no need to be emotional about this. It's simply practical financial planning, and we did attend the gathering." "How generous of you to attend my wife's memorial gathering," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "We raised you, Adrian," my mother interjected, her voice rising slightly. "We provided for you. We supported your career." "Provided for me?" "My wife is gone!" I was shouting now, the grief and rage of the past weeks erupting. "I didn't inherit a fortune. I lost the love of my life, the mother of my child, and you're treating it like some kind of financial windfall." My father's expression hardened. "There's no need for melodrama. Elena was involved in risky ventures, researching that old building. One must be prepared for unforeseen outcomes. And now that she's unavailable, it's only practical to discuss how her potential assets should be managed. Family should look after family." In that moment, as my father casually framed Elena's work as risky ventures and sought to profit from her disappearance, something inside me snapped. The grief that had left me passive and numb for weeks suddenly crystallized into furious clarity. "Get out," I said quietly. "Adrian, be reasonable," my mother began. "Get out of my house!" I roared, the force of my anger propelling me to my feet. "How dare you come here asking about Elena's assets? How dare you insinuate anything about her work? She was worth 1,000 of you, and you couldn't even bother to comfort your own son when his wife vanished." My parents looked genuinely shocked by my outburst. They had never seen me truly angry before, having raised me to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to be the dutiful son while Caroline was the indulged one. "We're only asking for what's fair," my father said stiffly, standing up. "We're your parents, Adrian. We deserve respect." "Respect is earned," I replied, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sorrow. "And you've earned none today. Now get out before Leo comes home and hears what kind of people his grandparents really are." They left in a huff, my mother murmuring about my ingratitude, my father muttering about my irrationality. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, trembling. Later that afternoon, when I picked Leo up from school, he seemed more withdrawn than usual. In the car, he finally spoke. "Daddy, why were Grandma and Grandpa at our house today?" My heart sank. "Did you see them?" Mr. Harrison let me get my coat early, and I saw their car from the window. "Did they bring something for us?" The innocent question, the lingering hope, broke my heart anew. "No, sweetie, they just came to talk to me about some grown-up things." "Did they ask about Mummy's findings?" he asked, surprising me with his perception echoing my father's callous term. "What makes you say that?" Leo looked down at his hands. "I heard Grandpa talking to Uncle George after the gathering. He said Mummy might have found something valuable at the old building, and he asked it if she left it to us." That my 10-year-old son had overheard such a conversation made me feel physically ill. "Leo, your Mummy made sure we would be taken care of." "Yes, but findings don't make up for not having her here," he said sagely. "I would give all the valuable findings in the world to have Mummy back." "Me too, baby," I whispered. "Me too." That night I called Isabella, who had returned to Rome but was planning to extend her stay with us during her upcoming academic break to help us adjust. I told her about my parents' visit and their shocking demand. "Are you serious, Adrian?" she exploded. "They want access to whatever Elena might have uncovered." "That's predatory." "I know," I said softly, the familiar ache of missing Elena intensifying. "I still can't believe they actually asked, but I'm worried they might not let it go. My father can be very stubborn when he thinks there's something to gain." Isabella was quiet for a moment. "Eleanor told me about her research into that building, Adrian. She said she'd found something important, something about family history, maybe even some hidden artifacts tied to the original owners. She was meticulous about documentation, planned to secure everything properly. She would be furious if your parents tried to exploit her work or her disappearance for their own gain." "I know," I said softly. "I think I need to talk to Thomas about the legal situation, just to be prepared. And maybe look for that old box she mentioned." "That's a good idea," Isabella agreed. "And, Adrian, don't let them pressure you. Elena worked for that, whatever it is, to secure our family's history, not theirs." The next day I met with Thomas at his office. He was sympathetic but not entirely surprised by my parents' behavior. "Unfortunately, I see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, Adrian," he said, reviewing what little official documentation Eleanor had left behind regarding her research and personal effects. "But I can assure you, based on what Eleanor shared with me about her intentions for anything she found, it would be intended for family. Your parents would have no automatic legal claim to any of it." Could they try to force their way in? Claim the findings were family property because of their connection to the building's history? I asked, worried. Thomas shook his head. "Any documented discovery Eleanor made would likely be considered hers, or belonging to her estate, particularly if it was outside the scope of her official gallery work. And parents have no automatic right to access an adult child's assets, especially when there's a spouse and child. The challenge might be if there's no clear documentation, or if the findings are intangible." He agreed it would be prudent to locate the old box Eleanor had mentioned. That reassurance should have made me feel better, but as I left Thomas's office, my phone buzzed with a string of text messages from my parents and, surprisingly, from Caroline. "From my father, we need to discuss this matter like adults. Call me." From my mother, "I raised you better than this, Adrian. Family comes first." From Caroline, "You've always been selfish, but this is low, even for you. Mom and Dad deserve better." The hypocrisy of Caroline, who had barely looked up from her phone during the gathering, accusing me of selfishness, was almost laughable. Almost, if it weren't so painful. That evening, as Leo and I were eating dinner, my father called. When I didn't answer, he left a voicemail demanding a family meeting at their house on Sunday afternoon. This concerns all of us, Adrian. Be there at 2. Bring Leo. I set the phone down, my appetite gone. Involving Leo in this ugly situation was the last thing I wanted, but maybe it was time to have everything out in the open, to make a final break if necessary. With Thomas's advice about documentation in mind, I felt more confident in standing my ground, especially if I could find that box. "Was that Grandpa?" Leo asked, pushing his star-shaped toast around his plate. "Yes," I admitted. "He wants us to come over on Sunday." Leo was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do we have to go?" The fact that my son, who had once loved visiting his grandparents, now seemed reluctant spoke volumes. "I think we should," I said carefully. "Sometimes it's important to face difficult situations directly, and I think there might be something important at their house, something your mommy left." He nodded, a look of determination crossing his face that reminded me painfully of Elena's resolve before tackling a challenging restoration. "Okay, can I bring something with me? I have an idea." "What kind of idea?" I asked, curious about his sudden intensity. "Just something Mummy taught me about standing up for what's important," he said cryptically. "Can I use the computer after dinner?" "Agreed," I said, wondering what my 10-year-old was planning, but trusting that whatever it was, it came from the good heart and strong values his mother had helped instill in him. The days following my parents' visit were filled with conflicting emotions. The gnawing anxiety about Elena remained a constant heavy weight, but now it was complicated by anger and betrayal toward my family. In quiet moments when Leo was asleep, I found myself revisiting memories from childhood, seeing them in a new, harsh light. There were the school events my parents missed for Caroline's equestrian competitions, but never the other way around. The holidays when my academic awards were met with quiet nods, while Caroline's every small achievement was lavishly celebrated. The subtle ways my contributions were expected, while Caroline's were seen as optional. Small inequities that seemed insignificant individually, but formed a clear pattern when viewed collectively. I called Clara, my neighbor, who had become an unexpected source of comfort in the weeks since Eleanor's disappearance. "Am I overreacting?" I asked her after explaining my parents' demand. "Is it normal to feel this angry, or is it just grief making everything worse?" "Adrian," she said firmly, "what your parents did is beyond inappropriate. It's cruel. And it's not just grief. You're allowed to be angry." Her validation helped, as did a long conversation with Isabella that evening. She was indeed planning to take a leave of absence from her position to come stay with us for a few months, a kindness that brought tears to my eyes. "Eleanor made me promise," she explained, "years ago when Leo was small. She made me swear that if anything ever happened to her, I would be here for you both. I intend to keep that promise." The contrast between Isabella's loyalty to her cousin's wishes and my own parents' behavior couldn't have been starker. Meanwhile, Leo had been unusually focused on some project he was working on in his room, hunched over his desk with paper and colored pencils. When I asked what he was doing, he just smiled secretively and said, "Something important for Sunday." On Saturday, remembering Eleanor's last words and Thomas's advice, I decided to search specifically for the old box Eleanor had mentioned, focusing on places she might hide something important. In the back of a closet in her study, behind some large canvas rolls, I found it, a heavy wooden chest intricately carved that I had never seen before. Inside, among layers of tissue paper, were sketches, photographs of the downtown building, and a thick journal. At the top of the journal, a loose envelope with my name on it in Eleanor's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it to find a letter, dated just a month earlier. "My dearest Adrian," it began, "if you're reading this, it means my research has led to complications. I didn't want to worry you, but I've taken precautions. I've documented everything about my findings at the old building, and I've secured them. This chest contains the details. My research uncovered a significant historical discovery connected to the building's original owners, something potentially very valuable, but also something that certain parties might wish to keep hidden. My findings are explicitly documented as intended for our family's security and Leo's future. Use it wisely, live fully, and know that my greatest joy was being your wife and Leo's mother. I broke down sobbing, both terrified by the hint of danger she had faced and deeply moved by her foresight and care. Eleanor had known there was a risk, perhaps not of an accident, but of something, and had prepared for it while trying to spare me the worry. It was so typically her, both frustrating and loving in equal measure. The letter continued with specific instructions about accessing digital files and contacting a contact she trusted, but also included a paragraph that caught my attention. I've made specific arrangements for the provenance of my findings. This is important, Adrian. I suspect your father has long known about the potential historical significance of the old building. His firm was involved in its restructuring years ago, and I found records hinting at his awareness. I believe he hoped to somehow gain control of any discovered assets through legal loopholes, or perhaps by acquiring the building himself. Don't let that happen. His financial situation is more precarious than he lets on, but Leo's future cannot be compromised to support his ambition. The revelation that my father had possibly known about the building's potential value and might even have a long-standing plan to exploit it added another layer of betrayal. Eleanor had protected me from this knowledge, probably trying to preserve my relationship with my family. Even in this, she had put my feelings first. Armed with this new information and the wooden chest, I called Thomas again to verify that Eleanor's documentation and arrangements for her findings were indeed secure from any claims, particularly from my father's firm or family. He assured me it was meticulously organized and ironclad. He also suggested I bring copies of Elena's relevant documents and the letter to the family meeting. It's not strictly legally necessary yet, he explained, but having Elena's explicit intentions and documented findings might be useful if they try to pressure you or claim some prior right. Sunday morning arrived with a sense of impending confrontation. Leo was unusually quiet as we got dressed, but there was a determined set to his small shoulders that reminded me painfully of Eleanor before tackling a difficult negotiation. "Are you sure you want to come?" I asked him one last time as we prepared to leave. "You could stay with Clara instead?" He shook his head firmly. "I need to be there, Daddy, for Mummy." On the drive to my parents' house, Leo clutched his backpack, refusing to tell me exactly what was inside. "It's a message from me and Mummy," was all he would say. As we pulled into the driveway of the imposing house where I'd grown up, I noticed several cars I recognized as belonging to my aunts and uncles, my father's business associates. My parents had apparently invited an audience, perhaps thinking I would be less likely to refuse them in front of extended family and influential contacts. "Ready?" I asked Leo, my hand on the ignition. He nodded, his face solemn beyond his years. "I'm ready, Daddy, don't worry." We walked to the front door hand in hand, both of us drawing strength from the other. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal my mother, dressed impeccably as if for a formal reception. Her face was set in a practiced expression of concern. "Adrian?" "Leo, come in. Everyone's waiting in the drawing room." We followed her through the grand hallway into the large drawing room where I'd sat through countless formal gatherings. Now it felt like walking into an ambush. My father sat in his usual armchair, positioned like a chairman presiding over a board meeting. Caroline was perched on the arm of a sofa, discreetly checking her phone. Around the room sat my Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Charles, my father's business partner, Mr. Henderson, and his wife. "Thank you for coming, Adrian," my father said formally, as if this were a corporate discussion rather than a family gathering. "We have important matters to discuss." I remained standing, keeping Leo close to my side. "Before we start, I want to be clear that whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Leo. He has a right to know what's happening regarding his mother's affairs." My mother frowned. "Adrian, this is hardly appropriate conversation for a child." If it's not appropriate for him to hear, then it's not appropriate for you to be asking, I replied evenly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. This concerns his future too. My father cleared his throat, a sound of impatience. Fine, we'll get right to the point. Your mother and I, along with our associates present, have been discussing the situation regarding Elena's disappearance and the potential value of her recent research into the old building. As you know, my firm has historical ties to that property. I bit back the retort that his ties were primarily financial. This wasn't the time for old grievances, but rather to protect Elena's legacy and Leo's future. We believe, he continued, his voice smooth and practiced, that given the potential significance of any findings Elena may have uncovered and the family's historical connection to the property, it's only fair that the family be involved in the management and distribution of any resulting assets. We're proposing a framework that would ensure these findings are properly secured and leveraged, providing security not only for you and Leo, but also supporting the broader family interests, including Caroline's less stable ventures. Caroline looked up from her phone long enough to give me a smug smile, as if my wife's tragic disappearance was some opportunity for personal enrichment. I've prepared a preliminary proposal for how these assets could be managed. We're suggesting control be overseen by a family trust, with your mother and I as primary trustees. I scanned the document. They were proposing to seize control of my wife's legacy. You want to take control of everything Elena worked for, everything she intended for her son's future. Family safeguards family wealth, Adrian. Managing complex assets requires expertise. Like how you couldn't be bothered to leave your gala when my wife went missing? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. At least someone had decency to recognize this. We had important guests. We couldn't just leave. Actually, you could have. You chose not to. Mom and Dad need stability, and Eleanor's work might provide that. And what about Leo's stability? That work was for her son's future. Now you listen here, Adrian. We are your parents. You owe us respect. You haven't shown me or Leo an ounce of respect since Eleanor disappeared. All you care about is what you can extract from this tragedy. This vulture behavior. Into this tense silence, Leo suddenly stepped forward, clutching his backpack. I have something to say. Sweetie, the adults are talking about important things right now. This is important too. It's about my mommy and what she would want. Mommy taught me that when people show you who they really are, you should believe them. You didn't come when Mommy disappeared. You didn't help Daddy when he was crying every night. You only came when you wanted Mommy's findings. I made something for you because I know why you really came. Map of real treasure. Listed were Mommy's hugs, priceless. Grandpa's calls, 0. That's what Mommy really cared about. Not old findings. Real treasure is people loving you. The silence was absolute. My father's hands trembled. My mother began to cry. I think we're done here. Do not contact us again unless it's to apologize. As we walked out, I felt sorrow and liberation. We had lost the illusion of supportive family. That was incredibly brave. I'm so proud of you. Mommy always said we have to stand up for what's important, even when it's hard. Mommy said the real treasure wasn't gold. It was the adventure and friends they had. My phone began buzzing incessantly, but I ignored them all. This wasn't a negotiation. Isabella was waiting on our porch. She had flown in early, wanting to surprise us. Over dinner, we told Isabella everything that happened at my parents' house. That's pure Elena right there, finding hidden meaning, showing people real value. That night, Isabella and I sat in the kitchen going through Elena's journal and documents. They'll try again. People like your father don't give up easily when there's potential gain. Have you thought about what this means for your relationship with them going forward? Are bad grandparents better than no grandparents? Elena's parents actually show up for him. The next morning, my phone showed 10 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and 2 from Caroline. There were also numerous text messages ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies that felt more like manipulation than genuine remorse. I decided to respond to just one message from my mother. "We need to talk about what happened." My reply was simple. There's nothing to talk about until you can acknowledge the harm you've caused and show real change. Leo and I need time and space. Then I blocked their numbers, a temporary measure to give us breathing room. I also emailed Thomas to inform him of what had transpired and provided him with copies of Elena's documents, asking him to be on alert for any legal maneuvers my parents might attempt. Though he had assured me they had no grounds for any claims on Elena's documented findings, I knew my father could be relentless. Over the next few days, my parents tried various approaches to re-establish contact. They sent flowers with cards that spoke vaguely of family misunderstandings. They attempted to reach me through mutual friends. My father even showed up at my workplace, only to be turned away by security when I refused to see him. Surprisingly, it was my Aunt Eleanor, my father's sister-in-law, who provided an unexpected source of support. She called from her personal phone, which I hadn't blocked, asking if we could meet for coffee. Wary but curious, I agreed. "Adrian, I want you to know that not everyone in the family supports what your father and mother did," she told me when we met. Charles and I were horrified. We only went to that meeting because Brad told us it was about ensuring Eleanor's legacy was properly handled for Leo, not about that. Her honesty was refreshing, and it helped to know that not all of my extended family were complicit in my parents' scheme. "They've always been focused on acquisition, Adrian," Eleanor continued, confirming what I'd felt but doubted for years. "We've all seen it, but no one wanted to interfere. Maybe we should have." A week after the confrontation, a formal letter arrived from my father, written on his business stationery, as if to lend weight to his words. It stated that unless I was willing to come to a reasonable arrangement regarding Elena's findings, they would be forced to reconsider our relationship with you and Leo entirely. It was meant to be threatening, I suppose, this idea that they would cut us off. Instead, it felt like permission to move forward without the burden of toxic relationships. 2 weeks after our confrontation, my mother tried a new tactic, showing up at Leo's school at pickup time. Fortunately, I'd already informed the school about the situation and they called me immediately. By the time I arrived, the principal had politely but firmly asked my mother to leave. Standing in the school parking lot, my mother looked smaller somehow, less imposing than she had throughout my childhood. "You're turning everyone against us," she accused when she saw me. "No, Mom, your own actions are doing that," I replied evenly. "Please don't come to Leo's school again. If you want to rebuild a relationship with us, it needs to start with respect for our boundaries." "We're your parents," she protested, tears forming in her eyes. "You can't just cut us out of your life." "I'm not cutting you out," I clarified. "I'm asking you to step back and reconsider how you want to be part of our lives. Do you want to be the grandparents who support and love Leo unconditionally, or the ones who saw his mother's disappearance as an opportunity for financial gain? The choice is yours, but there are consequences either way." She didn't have an answer for that, and we parted without resolution. It was the last direct contact I had with either of my parents for nearly 2 months. During that time, I focused on Leo, on starting to build our new normal without Elena, but with the support of those who truly cared for us. Isabella stayed with us for 3 months, her presence a daily reminder of Elena in the best possible way. She taught Leo about the constellations, something Elena had planned to do for his science project. She helped me catalogue Elena's findings and research when I was finally ready, sharing stories and memories that made the painful task bearable. Elena's parents visited for extended periods, filling our home with warmth and genuine love. Sophia taught Leo how to make the star-shaped toast Elena used to make. maintaining a connection to his mother through shared activities. Matteo patiently went through Eleanor's art books with him, showing him details Eleanor had pointed out to him years ago. Meanwhile, news of my parents' behavior spread through the family grapevine. Aunt Eleanor called regularly. Uncle Charles sent Leo a telescope, remembering his interest in astronomy sparked by his project. Even Caroline eventually sent an email that, while stopping short of a full apology, acknowledged that the timing and nature of their financial request had been insensitive. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in our adult lives that she had conceded any wrongdoing. 3 months after Eleanor's disappearance, on what would have been our 12th anniversary, I received another letter from my parents. This one came in a plain envelope, handwritten rather than typed on business letterhead. It was the first communication from them that felt potentially genuine. "Dear Adrian and Leo," it began, "we've spent these past weeks reflecting on our behavior and the pain we've caused you during an already unbearable time of loss. There are no excuses for what we did. We allowed certain priorities to override our love and responsibility as parents and grandparents. We failed you both, and we failed Elena's memory." The letter continued with specific acknowledgements of their actions, from their absence in our initial grief to the attempted financial maneuvers, without the vague language of their previous apologies. They didn't ask for forgiveness or for contact to be resumed, only expressed hope that someday we might have the opportunity to demonstrate, through actions not words, that they could change. I read the letter several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Then I showed it to Isabella before deciding whether to share it with Leo. "Seems different from their other attempts," she observed cautiously. "Less manipulative, more accountable, but ultimately it's your call whether to believe it." I tucked the letter away, not yet ready to make a decision about how or whether to respond. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Time would tell if their remorse was genuine or just another strategy. For now, Leo and I were focusing on healing, on building our life without Elena, but with her values and love as our foundation. Whatever happened with my parents would be determined by their actions going forward, not by promises or apologies, however well crafted. As Isabella prepared to return to Rome with plans to visit again soon, she helped me organize a small private memorial for Elena near Blackwood Pass, where her car had been found. Unlike the gathering at the gallery, which had been formal and tense, this was a personal tribute to Elena's spirit, held by the river she loved near the mountains. Friends and colleagues shared quiet memories. Sophia and Matteo placed a single white rose by the water. Leo presented his map of real treasure, explaining that while Mommy was gone, the treasure she gave them was still here. Notably absent were my parents and Caroline, who had not been invited. It was a boundary I needed to maintain for now, creating a safe space for grief and remembrance without the tension their presence would bring. As the quiet gathering wound down, Leo tugged at my sleeve. "Which grandparents, sweetie?" I asked, though I knew who he meant. "Your parents, the ones who came for the findings. I think Mommy would want us to give them another chance if they're really sorry." His compassion, so like Elena's, brought tears to my eyes. "We'll see," I promised him. "If they show us they've really changed, maybe next time." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was an opening. A possibility that the future might include some form of reconciliation. For now, that was enough. The confrontation in the drawing room marked a turning point in our lives. In the immediate aftermath, the division in my extended family was stark and painful. Some relatives quietly sided with my parents, viewing me as the ungrateful son who refused to prioritize family interests. Others recognized the appalling nature of my parents' demands and offered quiet support. My Aunt Eleanor became an unexpected ally, calling regularly to check on Leo and me and occasionally passing along family news without pressure or judgment. Uncle Charles, though less demonstrative, showed his support by sending Leo books on astronomy and even setting up a small, safe telescope in our backyard, remembering his interests in a way my parents rarely had. The most surprising reaction came from my cousin Sarah, Caroline's daughter, who was in her early 20s. She reached out via email about a month after the confrontation. "I've always seen how differently Grandma and Grandpa treated you compared to Mum," she wrote. "What they did after Elena disappeared was inexcusable, and I want you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong for standing your ground." Her message meant more than she could know. Validation from an unexpected source that I wasn't irrational or selfish for protecting Elena's legacy and Leo's future. My parents' initial reaction to being cut off was a campaign of manipulation. They enlisted family members to plead their case, sent guilt-inducing emails, and even attempted to use Leo's school as a point of contact. When these efforts failed, they shifted tactics to more veiled threats, suggesting they might contest Elena's documented findings or stake a claim based on their historical connection to the building, despite having no legal grounds to do so. Thomas, Elena's lawyer friend, responded to these threats with a firmly worded legal letter outlining the baselessness of any potential claims and the possible consequences of harassment. After that, the direct pressure eased, though the emotional fallout continued. Throughout this difficult period, I was surprised by how many people stepped forward to support us. Eleanor's colleagues established a small foundation in her name to support emerging artists, a cause she was passionate about. Clara helped Leo with homework when grief made concentration difficult. Even my boss at the engineering firm showed unexpected compassion, allowing me flexible hours to attend grief counseling with Leo. 6 months after Eleanor's disappearance, Isabella returned for another extended visit, this time with news. "Isabella, I'm transferring to the university here. I've been offered a position in the art history department starting next semester." "You're moving back to the States?" I asked, surprised. Isabella had been living in Europe for over a decade. She nodded, glancing at Leo, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Isabella, Eleanor made me promise to be there for you both. It's easier to keep that promise if I'm in the same country, ideally the same city." The decision to reconfigure our lives without Elena wasn't simple, but having Isabella nearby made it easier. She didn't try to replace her cousin, but her presence kept Eleanor's memory alive for Leo in countless small ways, from sharing her passion for history to continuing their tradition of finding real treasure in unexpected places. On Leo's 11th birthday, 7 months after the confrontation with my parents, I received another letter from them. This one came with a modest gift for Leo, a book about significant archaeological discoveries that actually aligned with his interests, suggesting a level of thought that had been missing from previous gifts of generic toys. The letter acknowledged the hurt they had caused and asked not for money or even forgiveness, but simply for the opportunity to see Leo on his birthday, even if just for 15 minutes in a public place of my choosing, with me present the entire time. After discussing it with Leo, who was cautiously open to the idea, I arranged for a brief meeting at his favorite science museum cafe. I set clear boundaries in my response. This was not a resumption of normal relations, but a tentative first step that would depend entirely on their behavior. The meeting was awkward, but surprisingly free of drama. My parents seemed genuinely chastened, focusing entirely on Leo, asking appropriate questions about school and his interests without bringing up Elena's findings, the past conflict, or making demands. They had clearly rehearsed their approach, but the effort itself showed a willingness to change that I hadn't expected. As we were leaving, my father asked quietly, "Could we possibly do this again sometime, maybe next month?" It was the lack of entitlement in his request, the understanding that access to his grandson was a privilege to be earned, rather than a right to be demanded, that made me consider it. "We'll see," I replied. "I'll let you know." That tentative beginning led to carefully structured occasional visits over the next few months. My parents remained on probation, so to speak, but they consistently respected the boundaries I established. They never mentioned Elena's findings again, never tried to see Leo without my permission, and gradually demonstrated through actions rather than words that they understood the damage they had done. A year after Elena's disappearance, we held a small gathering at the restored downtown theatre, the place where we met. Unlike the confrontation several months earlier, I chose to invite my parents and Caroline, making it clear that this was a significant test of their commitment to rebuilding our relationship. To my relief, they came, appropriately somber and supportive, bringing an old newspaper clipping about Elena's work on the mural that I hadn't seen. They stayed in the background, not making the day about them or their relationship with me, but simply honoring Eleanor's memory alongside everyone else who loved her. After the gathering, my mother approached me cautiously. "We've been seeing a counselor, Adrian," she confessed, "trying to understand where we went so wrong. Not just after Elena, but throughout your life. It's been illuminating." It wasn't an overnight transformation, and there were still awkward moments and old patterns that emerged occasionally, but the effort was consistent. And over time, a new, fragile relationship began to take shape. One based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. Caroline took longer to come around. Her initial reaction to being cut off from the potential benefits of Elena's findings was anger and resentment, manifesting in nasty online posts and attempts to turn family members against me. But as our parents gradually reformed their behavior, her position became increasingly untenable. Eventually, after nearly a year of minimal contact, she reached out with a genuine apology. She admitted during a tense coffee meeting, "I've been competitive with you my whole life, Adrian. You were always the reliable one, the successful one. And when Elena disappeared and I thought there might be something valuable, it just amplified every insecurity I've ever had. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I want you to know I'm working on it." It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had as siblings. It didn't immediately repair our relationship, but it opened a door to the possibility of a healthier connection in the future. As for Leo and me, the journey through grief was ongoing but evolving. The sharp, constant pain of early loss gradually transformed into something more manageable, a sadness that could coexist with moments of joy and hope. Leo still had nights when he cried for his mother, but he also had days filled with laughter and normal 11-year-old concerns. With Thomas's help, and guided by Elena's documents and her trusted contact, I began the process of properly documenting and, where necessary, securing the findings from the old building work that Eleanor had meticulously prepared for. Researching the history, understanding the significance of what she found, gave me purpose beyond just surviving day to day and connected me with people who shared Eleanor's passion for history and preservation. On the second anniversary of Elena's disappearance, I took Leo to a quiet spot by the river near Blackwood Pass. We sat on a bench watching the water flow by, remembering her together. "Daddy, I think the treasure map I gave Grandma and Grandpa helped them." "What makes you say that?" I asked. "Well," he said, picking up a smooth stone and skipping it across the water the way Eleanor had taught him, "they're different now. They listen more. They ask about my feelings. They remember what books I like." Mummy always said, sometimes people need to see themselves clearly before they can change. Your mummy was very wise, I agreed, amazed yet again by my son's perception and resilience. "I still miss her every day," he said, his voice quiet, "but I think she'd be happy about how we're doing, don't you?" I put my arm around him, this remarkable child who carried so much of his mother's spirit in him. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice thick. "I think she'd be very proud of us both." The truth was, losing Elena had revealed exactly who in our lives was truly family and who was not. Some relationships had been irreparably damaged, while others had deepened in ways I never expected. New connections had formed, creating a support system built on genuine care rather than obligation. My parents were now cautious figures in our lives, working to earn back trust one respectful interaction at a time. Isabella had become a constant, loving presence, an aunt who took her role seriously, a link to Elena's world. Elena's parents remained devoted grandparents, their love for Leo a direct extension of their love for their daughter. And Leo and I had each other, bonded not just by grief but by our shared experience of standing up for ourselves and discovering our own strength in the process. The potential value of Elena's findings remained secure, managed according to her explicit intentions, earmarked for Leo's future. The material security Elena provided was valuable, but her true legacy was in the values she instilled in us, the courage she inspired, the reminder that real treasure is found in human connection, and the love that continued to guide our choices. As we walked back from the river that day, Leo slipped his hand into mine. "Leo, I think the best way to remember Mommy is to be kind but strong like she was. To care about real treasure, not just finding things." "That's exactly right," I agreed, squeezing his hand. "That's how we honor her every day." The journey of grief isn't linear, and healing doesn't mean forgetting. There are still days when Eleanor's absence feels like a physical wound, when I reach for her in my sleep or start to tell her something before remembering she isn't there. But those moments no longer define our lives. Instead, we've learned to carry her with us in the choices we make, the boundaries we maintain, and the love we continue to share. The family that emerged from our loss isn't the one I expected to have, but it's built on a foundation of genuine care and respect, stronger for having been tested. If you've ever experienced family betrayal during grief or had to stand up for yourself against those who should have supported you, I hope our story reminds you that you're not alone. Sometimes the most difficult boundaries to establish are with the people we've been taught all our lives to accommodate. But protecting yourself and those who depend on you isn't selfish, it's necessary. Please share your experiences in the comments if you feel comfortable, like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and remember that family is defined by love and respect, not just blood. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I wish you the strength to honor your own worth in all your relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a story that really rips away the illusion of who family is supposed to be. It starts with the gut-wrenching shock of a sudden disappearance.
Yeah, absolutely devastating.
But Adrian Carter's account, shared through his writing, which is incredibly raw, very personal, it reveals something, well, arguably even more shocking.
Which is the reaction, right? Not from strangers, but from the people who should have been his bedrock.
Exactly. We're talking immense grief met with just chilling indifference, a focus that snaps almost immediately, not onto the missing loved one, Elena, but onto, like, personal gain.
What's fascinating here, I think, is how Adrian's narrative forces us to confront some really uncomfortable truths about loyalty, obligation, what family even means.
Right.
So our mission today is to navigate this story, pull out those key insights about grief, sure, but also about the courage it takes to set boundaries when you really need them.
Especially with family.
Especially then.
Yeah.
And, about finding support in unexpected places when maybe the people closest to you fail. We'll trace the crucial moment, the surprising turns his writing lays bare.
It's a powerful journey. And Adrian's story begins, kind of paradoxically, with this scene of beautiful connection. He describes meeting his wife, Elena. He was a structural engineer working on restoring this old downtown theater.
And she was an art historian, studying the murals there.
Right.
A classic meet cute almost.
Almost, yeah. He writes about being just captivated by her passion, her wit, the way she saw history and beauty everywhere.
And the proposal. That detail stands out.
Oh, yeah. On scaffolding, high above the stage.
With a ring made from what? a paint-stained strain.
That's it. It's such a vivid image, and it immediately signals, doesn't it, that Elena wasn't really part of the, let's say, the established conservative world of Adrian's family.
Right, who apparently had their reservations about him marrying, quote, beneath him.
Mm-hmm. She brought a different kind of richness into his life.
Absolutely. A richness that clearly extended to their family life. I mean, Elena became this successful curator known for championing artists.
But Adrian's writing, it really emphasizes her dedication at home. Their path to having Leo their son, it was tough.
2 years trying, failed attempts. Real disappointment, he writes.
Yeah, before this unexpected, just joyous pregnancy with Leo.
And you could feel Elena's devotion to Leo just leap off the page.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian writes she didn't just curate art exhibitions. She curated Leo's childhood.
That's such a great phrase.
Isn't it? Seeing his Lego creations as architectural wonders, never missing a school play, reading constantly, planning trips. He says she held Leo like he was the most precious masterpiece she'd ever encountered.
It paints such a clear picture, a really tight, loving bond. Mm-hmm. But amidst these warm memories, Adrian does hint at these subtle shifts in the months before she disappeared.
Oh, like what?
Cryptic calls taken in private, late nights, looking over documents that weren't about art. A tension in her shoulders she'd brush off as just, work stress.
Things he maybe didn't question too much at the time.
Exactly. Things he writes with that awful clarity of hindsight that he just dismissed.
Hindsight is brutal in these stories. And his description of that final morning, it's particularly haunting because it starts so normally.
So mundane. Star-shaped toast, packing a backpack, a normal kiss goodbye.
A promise to be home early for Leo's science project.
But Elena's very last words to him, now they feel weighted with this tragic irony. They were anything but mundane.
What did she say?
Don't forget to check the deadbolt, Adrian, and remember what I told you about the old box.
The old box.
Okay.
So a practical instruction mixed with something totally cryptic.
Yeah, something he didn't understand then.
That lingering mystery, it just amplifies the devastating shock of the call that came later, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The call from Detective Miller. Adrian recounts his voice just shaking, describing hearing that Elena's car was found over an embankment, empty.
And the police, they weren't sure what happened.
They mentioned a potential accident, maybe swept away by the river.
Yeah.
But then that chilling little phrase hanging in the air. Or perhaps something else. The drive to the past, seeing the mangled car, he calls it a cruel sculpture left by the river. Visceral.
The immediate aftermath, that sheer physical weight of shock and grief, it must have been unbearable.
And then came the unimaginable task. The one Adrian describes as the hardest moment of his life.
Telling Leo?
Telling Leo. Trying to explain disappeared to a 10-year-old. Leo's innocent questions. Is she hurt? Can they fix it?
Oh, gosh.
Met with the devastating, fumbling truth, and they can't find her right now. Her car went into the river.
And Leo's reaction?
A raw, primal cry, Adrian writes, clinging to him and asking if this meant she wasn't coming home. Ever.
Just shattering. And in that moment of utter desolation, Adrian writes about needing his parents.
The people you instinctively turn to, right, in crisis.
Yeah.
And this is where the narrative takes its first sharp, painful turn into betrayal. Adrian calls his parents, seeking comfort, support. And in the background, he hears it. The unmistakable sounds of their annual Founders Gala.
Oh, no. They were at a party.
Yes. And his mother's reaction, it's cold, immediate, and just shocking. She calls his wife's disappearance incredibly inconvenient.
Inconvenient.
Because they were about to greet the senator. She suggests they discuss this complexity tomorrow, maybe when the dust settles.
Wow. And the father.
His father. No question about Adrian, none about Leo. His first immediate concern is financial.
You're kidding.
Regarding Elena's estate, does she have her affairs in order?
Unbelievable. Straight to the money.
Adrian's stunned reaction, he captures it perfectly. He writes, I can't believe this is your response, asking them, how could you possibly be at a party right now?
And what did they say? How do they justify that?
Their justification. It was a critical night for the firm, important guests. He should just be reasonable.
Reasonable. When his world had just shattered.
Yeah.
This moment, it reveals Adrian's first critical insight, doesn't it? That blood ties don't automatically guarantee support. Not in a crisis.
Not at all.
In fact, his writing shows that sometimes the people you least expect step up, while those you depend on can reveal this. Devastating lack of empathy, prioritizing social standing, financial matters over raw human pain.
Exactly. Adrian hangs up from that call and immediately starts getting texts and calls of support from friends, colleagues, even just distant cousins.
People offering genuine warmth, practical help.
Yes. A neighbor, Clara, arrives with food and tea. Just a simple act of kindness, but it felt monumental against the backdrop of his parents' coldness. The contrast, he writes, couldn't be more stark.
So with the uncertainty, no funeral could be held right away.
No. Just a small gathering, organized a few days later at the gallery Elena loved. Adrian describes the days leading up to it as just a blur, trying to exist, trying to comfort Leo while barely functioning himself.
And the gathering itself, did the parents show up?
They did, and it sort of continues this painful theme. His parents and sister Caroline arrive noticeably late.
Excuses.
Oh, yeah. Traffic, dressing difficulties. Their presence feels performative. A perfunctory hug. His mother's conspicuously dry eyes. Caroline scrolling on her phone. His father checking his watch. Restless.
Compare that to, well, how are Elena's friends and family?
That's the thing. The genuine, visible grief of Elena's colleagues, her friends, and especially her cousin, Isabella, who flew all the way from Rome.
Wow, from Rome.
Adrian writes about Isabella holding Leo's hand the whole time, her face just etched with sorrow, offering comfort without even saying a word.
Real presence.
Yeah. Despite his own crushing grief, Adrian finds the strength to speak. He looks at Leo, talks about Elena's passion, her fierce love for their son, her quirks.
Like what?
Naming all their plants, her irrational fear of escalators.
Yeah.
Her absolute dedication. And he notes the bitter irony right then, comparing Elena's vibrant, living passion to the obvious detachment, the eagerness to leave radiating from his parents.
And then comes that chilling moment Adrian overhears.
Yeah. Amidst the quiet conversations during the reception, his father,
What was he saying?
talking about Elena's old downtown property, her research, potential, valuable finding.
Oh, back to the money.
Right back to it, talking about the complication if no will was found, noting the potential for significant value. His focus is immediately, explicitly financial, reducing Elena's life, her work, to a potential asset.
While this is happening, Adrian also sees the unwavering support from Elena's parents, right? Sophia and Matteo.
Yes, they are just there, offering comfort, helping with practical things, caring for Leo. And it hits Adrian with painful clarity. The unconditional love he desperately needed wasn't coming from his side of the family, it was coming from Elena's.
This quiet focus on potential assets. It doesn't stay quiet for long, does it?
Not at all. Just 2 weeks later, Adrian's trying to wade through paperwork, just trying to breathe, and his parents arrive, unannounced.
Claiming they're just checking in, I bet.
Exactly. But his mother quickly signals the true motive. They can talk openly now, while Leo is safely at school.
Okay, here it comes.
And Adrian's writing captures the almost clinical language they use. They frame the discussion around Adrian's prospects, his adjusting to his new life.
Oh, like he's a business problem to solve.
Pretty much. His father points out Elena's remarkable collection, her valuable holdings, assessing them like inventory.
And the ask.
Then comes the explicit demand. Stated without preamble, they ask for money. Or, failing that, access to whatever valuable assets Elena may have left or uncovered.
Access? What does that even mean?
They want a significant portion, they say, to assist their liquidity needs.
Theirs.
Yes, and to support broader family interests, including Caroline's less stable ventures.
So they want a cut of his missing wife's potential assets. Assets meant for her son, to prop up their finances and bail out the sister, while he's still deep in grief.
The sheer audacity. Adrian's disbelief just gives way to this rising, scorching anger. He pushes back hard. Are you asking me for money now?
Good for him.
Access to my missing wife's potential assets. Assets intended for her son. He throws their absence at the gala back in their faces.
And how do they react to being called out?
They dig in, justify the demand, call it simply practical financial planning.
Practical.
Insisting family comes first, reminding him they raised you, they supported your career. His father dismisses Elena's passion project as risky ventures, talking about unforeseen outcomes.
It's a complete reduction of her life's work, her passion, her intentions, into just a potential financial windfall for them.
That, Adrian writes, was the moment, his absolute breaking point.
I can imagine what happened.
He erupts. The grief, the rage, the shock of their callousness, it all combines. He roars, "Get out of my house."
Wow.
He calls their behavior vulture behavior, tells them Elena was worth 1,000 of them. He describes their shock that they'd never seen him lose his temper like this. He'd always been the compliant son, you see.
So they were stunned by his reaction.
Totally stunned. They stand up, recovering slightly, trying to pull rank, claiming what's fair, demanding respect.
and Adrian.
He delivers that powerful line, respect is earned, tells them to leave before Leo gets home.
That confrontation, it's a pivotal moment, isn't it? It reveals a second key insight, maybe, that true self-respect, protecting those you love, sometimes requires confronting and creating distance from the very people who are supposed to be your family.
Yeah, Adrian's writing shows the pain of that for sure, but also this strange dawning sense of liberation.
Liberation from the obligation, maybe.
I think so. So they leave, leaving Adrian shaken, but also, he writes, feeling this strange shift. The pain is still there, immense pain, but the illusion is gone.
And Leo, does he sense any of this?
Well, later, when Adrian picks Leo up from school, Leo mentions seeing his grandparents' car, asks if they brought anything, and then he reveals he overheard his grandfather talking about findings.
Oh no, the poor kid heard that.
Yeah, and his comment is just incredibly insightful for a 10-year-old. He says, findings don't make up for not having her here. He just wishes for his mother back more than any treasure.
Heartbreaking, but wise.
That conversation, combined with Elena's last words about the old box, it spurs Adrian into action. He calls Isabella.
Elena's cousin from Rome.
Yes, who is absolutely outraged by his parents' predatory behavior, as she calls it. Isabella confirms Elena had been deeply immersed in research about this old building connected to the family, finding something important, history, artifacts.
And crucially,
Isabella reinforces that Elena was meticulous, and she intended any findings solely for their family's security, for Leo's future, not for the extended family's liquidity needs.
so Adrian goes looking for this boss.
He does. Searches, finds this hidden wooden chest. Inside, sketches, photos, a journal, and a letter from Elena, dated just a month before she disappeared.
A letter from Elena, what did it say?
Reading it, he writes, is incredibly poignant. Elena hints at complications, worries, says she was taking precautions, documenting everything, securing her findings.
And she mentions the value.
Explicitly. Says they are potentially very valuable and intended solely for our family security and Leo's future.
Okay, so her intentions were crystal clear.
Crystal. And then comes the devastating revelation about Adrian's father.
What about him?
Elena suspected he knew about the building's significance, his firm's historical ties to it, his own precarious financial situation, and his hope to gain control of whatever she found.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just opportunism after she disappeared. It was potentially something calculated beforehand.
That's the implication. She explicitly warns Adrian in the letter, don't let your father compromise Leo's future. It adds this chilling layer of calculated intent to his father's actions.
So now Adrian has Elena's words, her documentation. What does he do?
He meets with Thomas, Elena's lawyer friend. Thomas confirms the documentation is, quote, ironclad.
Meaning the parents have no legal claim.
None automatically. But Thomas advises Adrian to bring copies of Elena's documents, the letter to the inevitable family meeting.
Which the father demands.
Right. Oh, quickly.
Yeah.
For the following Sunday. At their house. And the demand explicitly includes bringing Leo.
Putting Adrian in a terrible position. Does he go?
Despite the dread, he decides they have to face it directly. And for Leo.
And Leo. How does he feel about going?
Initially reluctant, understandably, but then he shows this fierce determination, says, for mommy. And he starts working on this secret project. Calls it something important for Sunday, a message from me and mommy.
A secret project.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Meanwhile, Adrian's writing reveals that facing this forces him to look back, seeing this pattern of subtle inequities, Caroline, the sister, always being favored. It helps him understand the root of his parents' entitlement, maybe.
But amidst all this pressure, he finds strength and external support too, right?
Yes, absolutely. Clara, the neighbor, validates his anger, calls his parents' actions beyond inappropriate, cruel, tells him he's allowed to be angry.
That validation must have been huge.
Huge. And Isabella's loyalty is just unwavering. She makes plans to move nearby, keeping her promise to Elena to be there for them.
This highlights another insight, doesn't it? Genuine support often comes when life is hardest, and sometimes from unexpected sources. Adrian's story really underscores building a support system based on demonstrated care, not just blood.
Totally. So Sunday arrives, Adrian and Leah go to the parents' house. And it's exactly what Adrian feared. An ambush.
How so?
Aunts, uncles, business associates, all gathered. Clearly an audience meant to pressure him.
But Adrian sets a boundary immediately.
Right away. He states that whatever they have to say, it has to be said in front of Leo. He resists his mother's immediate objection.
Good for him. So the father presents their proposal.
Yes. frames Elena's findings as potentially invaluable, requiring family involvement due to historical ties, proposes a family trust.
Controlled by
Controlled by the parents and an associate, allocating value for various family needs, including, yes, Caroline's less stable ventures.
It's so thinly veiled. They want control and a piece of the pie.
Exactly. And Adrian firmly rejects it, directly accuses them of trying to take control of what Elena intended solely for her son, reminds them again of their absence during his grief.
And the tension escalates.
Oh, yeah. Parents, Caroline, they push back, citing their past support, claiming they need stability. Adrian counters, focusing on Leo's stability, Elena's explicit instructions. His father invokes his authority, demands respect.
And Adrian, does he back down?
No, he repeats his devastating vulture behavior comment. You can imagine the tension in that room with the audience watching.
And then the shift. You mentioned Leo.
And then the moment everything shifts, Leo steps forward. His voice, Adrian writes, is clear, strong, cuts right through the adult tension, startling everyone. He pushes past his grandmother's condescending attempt to dismiss him.
And what does he say?
He speaks his truth. He quotes his mother directly. When people show you who they really are, believe them.
Wow. From a 10-year-old.
He states simply that people who only come around when they want something, they're not really family. And then he lists their failures. The lack of calls, visits, help since mommy disappeared.
He lays it all out.
He does. And then he reveals his secret project, his map of real treasure.
It's a map. What is it?
It's a child's drawing, but Adrian's description makes it sound incredibly profound. It lists priceless things, mommy's hugs, infinite things, daddy reading stories, things provided, Isabella, Sophia, Mateo's love, more than all the treasure in the world.
Oh my goodness.
And then things not provided. Grandma and Grandpa's calls helping, 0. The value listed next to it. Immeasurable, not for sale.
Immeasurable, not for sale.
Leo explains it, his voice unwavering. This is what mommy really cared about. Real treasure is people loving you. And pointing right at his grandparents, he says, this is what you didn't help find.
The impact in that room must have been immense.
Adrian writes, absolute silence. His parents visibly distressed. Caroline in shock. The simple, irrefutable truth delivered by a child. It hit them in a way Adrian's anger hadn't.
This is maybe the most powerful insight of all, isn't it? Sometimes the clearest perspective, the most cutting truth, comes from the most unexpected source, unburdened by adult pretense.
Completely. Adrian and Leo leave shortly after that. Adrian declares they are done, not to be contacted unless they can show genuine change.
And how does Adrian feel leaving?
He writes about this mix of sorrow, losing the illusion of the family he thought he had, but also a profound sense of liberation, freedom from that toxic obligation.
And in the car.
Adrian tells Leo how immensely proud he is. Leo explains the map's origin, it was a lesson from Elena, actually, about pirate treasure and what value truly means. Her wisdom, Adrian realizes, is just echoing through him.
Wow. Elena's legacy right there.
Exactly. In the immediate aftermath, Adrian blocks his parents' calls, texts they were relentless. He leans on Thomas, the lawyer, for that legal guffer. Isabella arrives early, which is a huge comfort. She confirms, the parents will probably try again.
So they have to figure out the path forward. Boundaries.
Difficult conversations. Weighing fairness to Leo against protecting him, Isabella offers that perspective Adrian needed. Quality over quantity when it comes to grandparents. Highlighting Elena's parents' unwavering, genuine devotion as the real model.
Did the parents keep pushing?
Oh, yeah. Manipulation guilt texts, veiled threats about contesting the findings.
But Elena's documentation held up.
Thomas's legal letter, armed with Elena's foresight, countered them effectively. And then, unexpectedly, allies emerge.
From within the family.
Some, yeah. And Aunt Eleanor confirms his parents' long-standing focus on acquisition. And Uncle Charles sends Leo a telescope. Cousin Sarah offers validation. Plus, the community support continues. Elena's colleagues start a foundation. Clara keeps helping Leo. Adrian's boss shows real compassion.
And Isabel moves nearby.
She does. Makes the commitment, keeps her promise to Elena, provides this vital, loving link for Leo to his mother's side, her legacy.
So is there any reconciliation with the parents?
Over time, yes. Tentative steps towards a new relationship begin, but strictly on Adrian's terms.
How does that start?
Leo's 11th birthday. They send a thoughtful gift, a letter, a request to see him. Adrian sets strict boundaries for the first meeting. Brief, public supervised.
And how did that go?
Adrian writes, it was awkward, but crucially drama-free.
Yeah.
His parents actually focused on Leo, asked appropriate questions, requested future visits without that sense of entitlement.
A small shift, maybe, demonstrated through action.
Exactly, respecting the boundaries. It indicates a willingness to change, however painful the catalyst Leo's map was.
So gradual change unfolds.
Very gradual, carefully structured visits. They respect the boundaries. A year later, there's a gathering at the theater Elena loved. Adrian invites them as a test. They attend respectfully, bring a relevant clipping about the theater's history. They don't try to make it about them. His mother even quietly confesses she started seeing a counselor.
Wow. Real change, perhaps. What about the sister Caroline?
Initially, anger, resentment, some online posts apparently, but eventually she apologizes too, admits sibling rivalry, how Elena's findings amplify her own insecurities. It opens a door maybe for a healthier, if cautious, connection down the line.
And Adrian, meanwhile, what's he doing with Elena's findings?
He finds purpose there, working with Thomas, documenting, securing everything according to her instructions. It's a tangible way to honor her work, connect with her passion, and secure Leo's future exactly as she planned.
So fast forward, how are things later on?
2 years after Elena's disappearance, Adrian and Leo visit the river where her car was found, remembering her. Leo reflects on the impact of his map, says his grandparents are different now.
Different how?
They listen more, he says, ask about feelings, and then he quotes Elena again. Sometimes people need to see themselves clearly before they can change.
Out of the mouths of babes, echoing his mother again.
It's incredible. Adrian realizes that losing Elena, as awful as it was, paradoxically helped him see who was truly family.
The ones who showed up.
The supportive friends, his in-laws, those specific relatives who showed up with love and action, and who was not, at least initially. He's built this new, stronger support system, based not on obligation, but on genuine care.
So the state of relationships now, it's redefined.
Completely. His parents are cautious figures in their lives, still earning crust. Isabella is a constant loving presence. Elena's parents are devoted. Leo and Adrian's bond is unbreakable, forged in that shared grief and resilience.
And Elena's material findings are secure.
Secure for Leo. But her true legacy, Adrian writes, is the values she instilled. The values Leo now embodies so clearly.
And how does Leo see it now?
His conclusion captures it all. They honor mommy by being kind but strong, by caring about real treasure. Adrian agrees. Grief, he notes, is nonlinear, healing is ongoing. But they carry Elena's memory not just in sorrow, but in their choices, the boundaries they maintain, the genuine love that now defines their core family.
The structure they've built, based on care and respect, it sounds stronger than the one built on obligation and expectation ever was.
Absolutely. Adrian's experience, detailed so vividly in his writing, it speaks to a truth many of us unfortunately have faced or may face.
That pain, when people who should have been your anchors become sources of stress, disappointment, especially during moments of profound grief or crisis.
Yeah, it's incredibly isolating.
And this raises that important question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What are the real treasures we cultivate and protect in our lives? Is it the material stuff? Or is it the genuine connections, the love, the respect we build with others? Adrian's story, especially through Leo's eyes, gives us a pretty powerful answer.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that while setting boundaries, especially with family, can be incredibly painful, incredibly difficult, protecting yourself and those you're responsible for, like Leo, it isn't selfish.
No, it's absolutely necessary sometimes.
Family isn't just defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and crucially, showing up when it truly matters. So what does this all mean for you listening? Keep that question in mind as you navigate your own relationships, as you define your own real treasure. Thanks for diving in with us today.